The hiding places. When my two daughters, Carrie and April, were just tykes, they would ask for a bedtime story when I tucked them in. Sometimes I'd read one from a storybook, but often they would say, "Daddy, tell us a story about when you were a little boy." So I told them about hunting with my dog Bullet, about my best friend T.J. Conley and me riding his family horses, about playing Scrooge in an elementary school play, about kicking the can, and Annie over. But I never told them about two of my most memorable Christmases. To them and their families, I serve up this story in a somewhat adult style and invite the rest of you, especially those of you who grew up during the 50s, to sit back, eavesdrop, and perhaps revisit your childhood. In 1955, my family lived on a Crowley's Ridge hill farm in Clay County, just west of New Hope Church, near Pollard, Arkansas. 3 days before Christmas, my older brother Jerry and I cut a cedar from the fence row separating our yard from a pasture of strawberry blonde sage grass. We dragged the tree home, nailed it to a 1x12 plank, and left it on the screened porch. That night, after supper, Dad sat in his armchair and watched NBC's Camel Cigarette News Caravan with John Cameron Swayze, on, by the way, our first television set. Meanwhile, Mom, Jerry, and I followed our time-tested ritual of decorating the tree. First, we pulled the footstool from under Dad's feet and centered it in the front room window facing the gravel road at the bottom of the hill that was actually our front yard. Every Christmas, the stool became the stand for the tree. It was homemade from scrap lumber Dad had brought home from one of his carpentry job sites. 2 ends, a front, a back, a top, but no bottom. Mom had upholstered it using green, genuine simulated leather and brass tacks, but it was more than a stool. It was the cover I ducked behind in gunfights with outlaws and Indians. When flipped on its side, its hollow space became a garage for my cars and trucks, a barn for my horse, a shed for my farm implements. Next, we carried the cedar from the porch and placed it on the footstool. Then from the attic, we retrieved 2 cardboard boxes stuffed with decorations. Unpacking the boxes was like attending an annual reunion and getting reacquainted with old friends. Each piece seemed to have its own personality. Each had become a character which, over the years, had endured itself to us. For what seemed like hours, we searched for and replaced the bad bulbs that were shorting out the entire string of lights. We lassoed the tree with the lights and 3 tinsel ropes, one totally silver, one silver and green, and my favorite, silver and red. Then we strategically hung a motley assortment of dinged, scratched, peeling glass ornaments. With considerable care, we hung tinsel rain icicles, one by one, until our impatience led to hit-or-miss tosses. One element of our ritual changed that year, however. Angel hair was no longer to be used, since Mom had suffered an infection after getting some in her hand the year before. Finally, to simulate snow, Mom spread a white sheet at the base of the tree that then flowed down the sides of the hollow footstool and puddled onto the floor. With the completion of the ritual, the timing was right for Jerry and me to spy out the land for our presents. Since we had always opened our gifts on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day, shopping had to have been finished by now. Our presents had to be somewhere on the farm place. During the next 2 days, we searched high and low in the dark corners of Dad and Mom's closet, deep behind the clothes to where quilts lay stacked. In the unfinished portion of the attic, the floor of which was actually the kitchen ceiling, in the wash house, behind the coal oil stove, or some say cool oil stove, on which Mom heated water for baths and washing clothes. We looked even in the crevices of the stacks of hay bales in the barn loft and in the corners of the corn crib. Okay, listeners, now heads up, because we're leaving 1955 momentarily and flash back to 54, because at this same time that previous year, we, or I should say Jerry, found our presents, yet to be wrapped in, of all places, the back seat of our 1951 white two-door Ford. That night, he had feigned a trip to the two-holer outhouse. Since Mom and Dad had been to Piggott that afternoon while he and I stayed at Grandpa and Grandma's, he decided that a covert mission to the car might be a good idea. I was sitting in my rocking chair, eating popcorn and watching Arthur Godfrey on TV when I heard Jerry open the screen door to the porch and then the back door to the kitchen. I looked up from the bowl of popcorn to catch him signaling me to our bedroom. There he whispered the discovery. Immediately, I too needed to trip out to the privy. I eased open the Ford's passenger side door and discovered an orange toy logging truck, complete with logs and little silver chains to hold them onto the trailer, a race car whose steering wheel actually turned the front tires left and right, an authentic John Deere, now get this, it's true, an authentic John Deere manure spreader and disc actually bought at the John Deere dealership. With the smugness of a 6-year-old who seldom knew anything his mom and dad didn't already know, I entered the house through the back door into the kitchen and came smirking back to my popcorn and the ending of Arthur Godfrey. All the interrogation needed to lure me to spill my guts was Mom asking, "What are you grinning about?" "I know what I got for Christmas," I gleamed back. "I found presents in the car." Mother's face saddened. She wasn't giggling back a loving reply. "So, you boys have been prowling," she snapped as she cut her eyes to Jerry. Dad then entered the fray. "We'll just take everything back. No surprise, no Christmas. Both of you go to bed, and I better not hear a peep from that room tonight." I was so stunned that it never dawned on me to say sorry or to hope for forgiveness. "Had to blab, didn't you? Just couldn't keep your mouth shut," whispered Jerry, giving a sharp elbow to my stomach as he climbed over me to get on his side of the bed next to the wall. For me, the next day, Christmas Eve, was somber to say the least. I hardly spoke a word during the usual breakfast of hot chocolate with a melting marshmallow floating against the cup's rim, bacon, one fried egg, and white gravy burying a piece of Wonder Bread toast. From Mom, there was no morning hug that led to her pushing the hair back out of my eyes, no "how's my little man" from Dad, and another elbow from Jerry went unscolded. Never before had I realized that I could hurt my parents, sadden them with disappointment in me. This shame was an emotion that I'd never before felt to this degree. Oh, I had been scolded, swatted with a hand and a fly swatter, spanked with a yardstick, and even with a switch that I myself had to fetch. But never had I felt disgrace like this. This sting's intensity and weight exiled me to a place where repentance and atonement didn't seem to be even within the realm of possibility. I was a 6-year-old Sisyphus, pushing a boulder of guilt with no hope of relief. So that Christmas Eve day, I made myself scarce. Although it was cold, I spent most of my time in the hayloft of the barn. Playing Tarzan, I swung on the rope hanging from the trolley and rail used to hoist hay bales from a trailer below. I swung back and forth from stacked bales on the loft's east side across the open area to more stacked bales on the west side. Even acts of heroism in deepest Africa didn't ease my disgrace. Playing cowboys and Indians didn't either. Neither did soldiering against the Japanese on a South Pacific island in World War II. My world of play-like was no longer a sanctuary. Just before supper, I continued my self-imposed seclusion behind the cast-iron Morning Glory heating stove to play with Lincoln logs I'd received the previous Christmas. Mother called us to supper. I ate quietly, never looking directly at any of my family. I even passed on my piece of pie to get an early exit back to my Lincoln logs. After Mother finished the dishes, she called the family to the Christmas tree where, to my astonishment, were wrapped gifts. Dad had not followed through on his threat to take the presents back to the store. With a smile and then a hug, she handed me 3 packages. Faking excitement and surprise for my parents' sakes, I tore away the wrapping paper to uncover the orange logging truck, complete with logs and little silver chains to hold them onto the trailer, a race car whose front wheels actually turned left and right, and the genuine John Deere manure spreader and disc. I said a sincere yet sorrowful thank you during a hug of first Mom's neck and then Dad's. But you know, the thrill wasn't there. Even my parents' gift of forgiveness could not fully restore the joy. Its delicacy had been confounded by an experience that had paradoxically, on the one hand, knocked the living daylights out of me, and had, on the other hand, simultaneously knocked some sense into me. With all that said about 1954, let's return now to 1955. The bruises from the hard knocks of this 1954 Christmas had faded with time and completely disappeared due to the resurrection in Christmas 1955 of the familiar temptation to spy out the land. Bolstered by the lesson of keeping my mouth shut, curiosity elbowed repentance aside. Despite our reconnaissance efforts, Jerry and I found no presents. After we finished the dishes Christmas Eve night, Mom called, "Jerry, Mitchell, come to the tree and get your presents." Instinctively, he and I ran a couple of steps and slid across the linoleum floor to the tree as if we were stealing second in a baseball game. But no gifts were there. Bewildered, we stared back at Mom and Dad, who were by then snickering. "What presents?" Jerry whined. "The ones under the tree," laughed Dad. We searched the folds of the white sheet but found only more folds. "You're warm," laughed Mother. We pulled the sheet away and still found no presents. "You're hot. You're burning up," Mother again hinted. Jerry turned the footstool in the tree away from the window. And there, in the hollow of the footstool, were our gifts. One was what I wanted most for Christmas that year: a white-handled, silver toy cowboy cap pistol, snug in a genuine leather holster adorned with gold brads and red gemstones. This was the very set that I had coveted standing outside the display window of Smith's shoe store at Piggott. This set matched the toy Derringer I was allowed to buy after purchasing my school clothes and supplies with the money I made picking cotton and pulling bowls. 3 Saturday afternoons in a row, while Mom bought groceries at Green's Market, I had wiped with my bare hand the cloud of my breath off Smith's window to get a clear view of this prize. A gun and holster so authentic that they were sold at Smith's, where you could get real cowboy boots, real cowboy belts, and real cowboy hats. The thrill and joy I had stolen from the previous Christmas were back. We're back so impressively so that now, 62 years later, I'm telling, with just a pinch of artistic license, a true story about when, as a little boy, I hid in a barn loft. In this spot began the stirring of the sense of accountability. At the foot of 2 almost identical Christmas trees on 2 consecutive Christmases, I also was awakening to the blessing of restoration. Now in hindsight, I realize that once upon a time, I had actually pulled this gift from the hollowness of a homemade footstool. Now a postscript. Now some of you who've listened to this story might judge its ending as being a bit heavy, melodramatic, didactic, and contrived. If you've come to this conclusion, I suspect that you've never trotted in a circle as your mother held you by the arm with one hand and with the other hand popped you with a switch that you yourself had retrieved. Regardless, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and God bless you.